Hello game makers, this is GameMaker Rob, and in today's episode we have an army screen where we can choose a unit, see their stats, change their class, and we add a few more bits and bats as well. So let's get started. Okay, so inside the create event of the player we have three new enumerators. We have talking, army screen and world menu. You should be able to gather what they do from the names. It's also good to know that putting the player in these states stops him walking around, which is one of the problems I told you about in a previous episode. We weren't stopping the player from clicking, but these three states will do that. These four states will do that, sorry. So we're just making sure that he isn't idle when we're doing other stuff. Okay, so going to the step event of the player, and in the idle region here we are checking to see if we press the enter key, because we want to bring up the menu. Previously it just kind of displayed every time we moved, but now we're going to have the player press a button to bring up the menu first. That's what this is going to do. Press enter. We're going to change the state to world menu. That's going to draw the options we have, and highlighted option, that's going to track which option we're going to choose. And the default one, the starting one, is going to be army. If we're not pressing enter, then do the usual thing we did before, so just highlight possible world points, that kind of thing. Same code as before, but that's what we've added in the idle state. And then you can see we've wrapped these different states within else statements. That's because we are checking for keyboard presses more than once in this event, and if we don't have else statements, then if we press enter in the idle state and we're checking for it in the world state, then it will count that as having pressed enter as well, when in fact what we want is we want to check inside each state for pressing enter. So yeah, that's why we're wrapping the states in else statements. So we also have a new state called world menu. So all we're doing is we're pressing up and down, as you saw on the intro, to switch between states. We have a new script because we do that kind of thing quite a lot. We're going to use it quite a few times in this episode, and it's going to return a new value for highlighted option. Let me just cover the rest of this first and we'll go into the script. If we press backspace, then we want to exit out of the world menu and set the player back to idle so they can move around whatever they want to do. If we press enter, then we want to take an action on whatever option we've chosen. The only option that works right now is going to be the army screen, so we're going to do a check to see if highlighted option equals the army option. If it does, then change the player state to army screen, and we're going to create an instance of obj army screen. You haven't got the object yet, so just create it. We're going to leave it blank for now because we're going to do all that stuff last of all. We just want to finish the player first, really. Okay, so if you look at SCR change option, we're going to pass it the variable that we want to change, we want to update. We want to pass it a minimum value. So what's the minimum value this variable can be? And we want to pass it a maximum value as well. What's the maximum value that this can be? It's quite a simple script. This one here, SCR change option. So we're passing three values. We're checking for down or right, and that's going to increase the value by 1. If increasing the value by 1 will take it past the max value, then it's going to be set to the min value. Otherwise, we're going to increase it by 1. Pressing up or left will reduce the value by 1. Again, if it's going to take it below the minimum value, then set it to the max value. Otherwise, reduce it by 1. And then when these checks have been done, we're just going to return the current value. one thing to note is that we only run the script for the button presses we want to happen. So we're only checking for up and down. So if the player presses left or right, then this isn't going to run. But it also means we can use the same script for pressing left and right as well in different parts of the game. Okay, so we're going to the draw event of the player. It's only a small change really. We're inside the draw actions region, and what you can see we've done is we've put this region inside its own state. We only want to draw the menu now if we're in this particular state. And we are also highlighting the options just so we know which one is being selected. That's what this code is going to do. So just make sure you've got this down, and the rest of the code should be the same really. The other thing we want to fix is in the step event of obj test. We want to wrap this code here inside a check to see if the player is talking, because we don't want the test object to register key presses in any other state really. So that's what this is for. Also, when we get to the end of the script, we want to put the player back into an idle state so the player can move again. You don't need this. This is just another debugging line that I like to use while coding. Okay, so now we've done that, we might as well run the game, make sure we can load a menu. So I also I changed one thing in the create event just so I didn't have to go through the first conversation. Where is it? In this region, where's the state? There we go, sorry. I just set the story state to the first battle so I could skip the first map basically. So that's why it just goes straight to the world map. So you can see the menu doesn't appear straight away. If we press enter, we should get this, and the very top option should be highlighted. If we press down, press up, it should work like this, and we can see the highlighted options so we know what's going on. So now is a good time to create the army object if you haven't already. And in the create event, we have its own enumerator. We've got choose unit, which is going to be the first thing that someone does when they go into the army screen. You'll see the unit itself, the unit's names. Well, you'll see all the units you've got, their names and the stats of the currently selected unit on the right. And then if we press enter, it'll take us to display options, and the options we'll have is change class, change gear, and fire unit, as in get rid of the unit. Then if we press on one of these three options, it'll take us to either change class, change equipment, or fire unit. We only have these three states working right now. Army list. So what we're going to do is, an easy way to display all the units in the player's army is we are going to run through this CSV here. Just open it. Yes, it's been deactivated. Awesome, right. So any unit that has a 1 in this column is in the player's army. So these three units are going to get added. Every time the player gets a new unit, it's going to be added on the line below. It's not going to affect this CSV. It's going to affect the grid that's used inside the game. So it just seemed a smarter way to add units really. Just use the same grid rather than a separate one, and then we can use it for everything really. Yeah, so we want to ignore all of these, but if we're going to use a for loop to run through this CSV, then do we want to check every time to see if it's a 0 or a 1, or do we just want to add these three to a list and then use that list to draw? That seems like a simpler option. So that is the reason we have a list here. It's just going to contain those characters. It's just basically the entries for those characters. Let me just, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's going to contain 13, 14, and 15. It's just going to have 3 numbers inside it. That's it. Stats to display. We want to draw the stats for each unit. This isn't going to store the stats for a particular unit. It's going to store the enumerators that we want to draw for the very similar reason we want to miss out characters in the army. We want to miss out some of the stats from the enumerators. There's only certain ones we want to display. If we go into the create event and then we want stats, this one. So we don't want to display all of this. We only want class, HP, level XP, these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's all we want. We don't want the rest of it. So we're gonna add the ones we do want to a list. And then we're going to use that list to draw text and draw the value of the stat for the particular unit. We have a new script called SCR sort stats. That's going to add the stats, the enumerators to stats to display. So let's make that script now. We're just going to pass it the list that we want to store these enumerators in. And then we're going to add these enumerators to the list. That's it. Very straightforward. To display the text for the stats, I decided the best way was to make a new CSV called statstrings.csv. It's this one here. And I've put an entry for every stat, but we don't use them all. Like I said, it's mainly HP max, MP max, and then these that we use. It's just so I can choose what text to display for each stat. So stat text grid is going to store those strings in a grid, basically. Selected unit. So which unit have we chosen to change class, or what unit do we want to change the gear of? Also, which units are we displaying at the moment? Selected option, we use that for a few different states. First of all, we're going to use it to display the options. So the first option is going to be change class, and then there'll be change equipment, and then fire unit, as in these 3 here. And like I said, we need to add all the units that are in the player's army to the army list, and that's what this for loop does exactly. That's all it's going to do, just adding the units to the list. So if we go into the step event of the army object, we've got a couple of regions. The first one here, we're making good use of our SCR change option script. If we press left or right, then if we are choosing a unit, then we want to switch between units. If we are in the changing class state, then we want to be switching between classes to choose. If we press up or down, then we are going to be changing the option from displayed options. So it's going to be change class, change gear, or fire unit. So all 3 options are using the same script. We're just passing it different variables, as you can see. Then if we press enter, so if we are in the choosing unit state and we press enter, then we want to display some options for the player to choose for that unit. And the first option is going to be change class. Otherwise, if we were already in the display options state and we press enter, then whichever one of these three options we were on and we pressed enter, we want to take an action. The only thing that works right now is changing class. So that's why we have a check here. If the state is changing class, then we want to know basically the starting class or the current class of the unit we've chosen. That's what this is going to do. It's going to find out. So for Butts and Brian, the class is fighter, and for the girl, it is priest. But remember, this grid stores strings. Selected option wants to be an integer, so we need to get the real value of the string because it's going to be a number. If the chosen option isn't change class, then do nothing really. If we had already pressed enter on choose unit and we'd already pressed enter again on display options to change class, and we were choosing a class and we then pressed enter, we then want to update the unit with a new class. That's what this is going to do. Then we want to reset selected option to the first of the display options, which is change class, and then we want to set the state to display options. So we can choose a different option for the same character. If we press backspace, then we just want to cancel or exit out of the screen. So if we're in display options, then we want to go back to choose a unit. We want to reset the selected unit and reset selected option. Otherwise, if we were on the first state, which is choose unit, then we're going to exit out of the army screen. So we might as well just destroy it, because we create a new instance every time we open it. So we want to get rid of it when we are done with it. That's what the instance destroy is for. We also want to set the player's state as world menu, so they can choose something else. If we are in any other state than display options and choose unit, then we want to set the state back to display options and set it to the default starting option. So say for example, we are in change gear or fire unit or change class, any of those three, and we press backspace, it's going to take us back to display options. Okay, so now finally we want to go into the draw GUI event for the army screen. We're going to use a sprite as a background. The one I've got is really bad, but it just serves a purpose. So it's just basically this color. It's 960 by 540 because that's the size of the port that I'm using in the room settings. Let's show you that quickly. So viewports and cameras, viewport 0, these values here, that's the size of the sprite I'm using. So at the very start, when we open the army screen, we're going to be on the choose unit region, or state, sorry. We want to draw all of the characters in the army, and we want to draw the stats for the currently selected unit as well. So draw scale, we're going to be drawing things several times larger than they actually are. That's what this is going to be used to multiply the width and height for those sprites. We need a start X and start Y to say where are we going to start drawing from. And this for loop is going to set coordinates for each of the unit, and we're going to use a new script to draw that unit. So if there's 3 units, this is going to run 3 times, and we're going to run the script 3 times. So this is quite a useful script as well, because we use it in several other states as well. So I'm going to show you that script now. SCR army screen draw unit. So we're going to pass it the unit. So this is the entry in our classes and characters CSV for the unit. So it's going to be 13, 14 or 15. Draw X, draw Y. Where do we want to draw it? And draw scale. How big do we want to draw the sprites? Those are our 4 variables. I forgot to change the description, sorry. So sprite grid is going to grab the relevant grid for that particular unit. You remember our sprite grids are stored in a list called character sprite grids. Then to get this, we're going to draw the eastward facing sprite with the idle state. So a sprite is going to grab the correct sprite from the grid for that character. And then name is going to grab the name of that unit from our classes and characters CSV. Then we want to draw that sprite. We want to draw it with the correct scale. And then we're going to set the H line to center, V line to bottom. It's being drawn from the bottom center. Set the color to red. Use the editor font. And then we are going to draw that character's name. That's all this is for, just to draw the name. And then we have another sprite. I'll show you that now. SBR Army Selection. It's a little wider and taller than the units themselves. I just designed it so that there's a few pixels gap on either side. So you can draw a white box around it. That's all it's for. So if I equals selected unit, then we will want to draw that selection box. And we want to draw it to scale as well. So now in the display options region or state, we're just going to be displaying the options, but we still want to display the unit that we've chosen. We're going to be drawing that chosen unit in the top middle, which is why we've got these draw coordinates there. And we're just going to run this script one time per step to get to draw the unit we want to draw. Then this for loop is going to draw the options. So there's 3 options, if you remember. There's change class, change gear, and fire unit. Text is going to get the relevant text from a option text, which is this one. It's going to equal one of these 3 things. Then if selected option equals I, so if we're on, basically we want to highlight the selected option, then so we want to draw it in white, otherwise draw it in grey. And we have a new font to draw the options. It's called F&T options, and then we want to draw the text here. So this is going to run 3 times. There's going to be 3 pieces of text. The option font I've got is Arial Black, and it's the size of 20. Try to make it fairly big. So now in the change class state region, we want to draw all of the 12 classes, so we can choose between them. We also want to draw the selected unit at the top, so that's what this first one is for, just to draw the chosen unit at the top of the screen. And then this code here, this double for loop, is going to draw 2 rows of 6 characters in each row. Each character is going to be a different class. That's what this class counter is going to track. It starts off at 1, which is the fighter, and then it'll get increased 12 times, with the first 11 increases being a different class, which we then use to pass to our new script, so we can decide what character to draw. And this code is very similar to choose unit. Really, there's a lot of similarities. because again we're going to check to see if class counter equals selected option. If it does, then we want to draw the army selection. And then last of all, display stats. This is pretty simple, straightforward. We want to know which unit we want to draw the stats of, so that's what this is going to hold. This value is going to be an entry for the classes and characters CSV, or the grid that stores that information. I'm going to run a for loop for as long as the list is stats to display. Stats to display, if you remember, is this. It's going to hold this information. It just holds the enumerators. The only stat we need to have anything extra for is the character's class, because the values for the class, we'll just open this quickly. So you can see the values for the class are numbers. We don't want to display a number for the class. We want to display the name for the class. So to do that, first of all, we need to grab the class of the character and then find out what the name of that character is. So that's how we're going to do it. So if the stats to display is class, grab the class, then grab the name of that class. So that's going to be stored inside stat value. Normally stat value would just be a number, but here it gets changed to a string, or like the name of the class, sorry, like a fighter mage. And then stat text is just going to hold one of these strings, one of these, just to make it clear to the player what stat is being displayed. And then we are going to use h-align FA right to draw the stats text, and then draw h-align FA left to draw the values. And that's going to allow us to draw everything based off the same x coordinates. And that's it. So now if we run the game, we should be able to have a half functioning army screen. So press enter, up and down, press army. We can see we've got Butts, Sarah and Brian with the stats on the right displaying the stats for the character. So you can switch between them. You can see that Sarah is a priest, the other two are fighters. If I choose Brian, press enter, then I've got some options. I can change class, change gear, or fire unit. If I press backspace, it'll take us back to choose unit. So let's choose Butts this time. You can see Butts is in the top right. Let's change his class. Then we've got all these classes pop up. Well, we've got a bug. As you can see, we can't go all the way from fighter to monk. I think I know why that is. But let's just change Butts' class to mage. Now you can see if we go back to choose unit, his class is down mage. We've got a priest and a fighter. We are not doing any checks to see if the character has enough stats to change class, but we just want to make sure they can actually change class first of all before we do that. But yeah, so that's how the arm screen is going to work for now. Let me just go and fix that bug, and that will be the end of the tutorial. So that was a silly mistake. All it was I had in the step event for pressing left and right for changing class, I had 0 and 11 when in fact fighter is 1 and monk is 12. So that's where the problem was occurring. So now if we run the game again, we should be able to choose any of the 12 classes. So army, Butts, change class. So let's change him to a monk. And there we go, awesome. So my stuff, my GUI is never pretty, but it works, and as long as the code works, then it means we can add better sprites and things and make it look more beautiful as time goes on. But for now, that is the end of the episode. Next time I want to finish off the army screen, and if we have time, let's do the shop as well. I'm looking forward to be able to get into the battle stuff fairly soon. That should be pretty fun, and that will be probably the biggest feature and one of the last features as well. So I hope you guys are enjoying the series. I will catch you next time. Bye for now.